Welcome, friends, to our Ananda Sangha Worldwide YouTube channel, and on behalf of Crystal Clarity Publishers as well. It's a joy for me to introduce our guest today, which is Darshan, and we're going to be discussing his journey and also the writing of his beautiful new book, Awakening the Natural Love of the Heart. Darshan, at the age of, I think, 24, came onto the spiritual path, became a disciple of the great yoga master Paramahansa Yogananda. I had the grace of meeting Swami Kriyananda at that time, and really through Swami Kriyananda's guidance and mentorship, he dedicated his life to the spiritual quest. So Darshan, I should say as well, not all know this, serves at our Ananda Assisi community, travels around Europe, actually around the world, sharing the teachings of self-realization. He's a beautiful violinist as well, and he has much to share with us from the heart. So Darshan, it's a joy to be with you. I'm so glad we finally got to do it.
Wonderful to be with you and with you all.
So Darshan, because not everyone knows you, I thought maybe we could start with a little bit with your own personal journey, how you came at that young age onto the spiritual path, and what what drew you, or what was that catalyst that really got you to dedicate your life in this direction.
So it started as young as, at the age of 5, 6, 7, I was a child. And I was born into a Dutch family in Amsterdam, totally a-religious, no religion at all. I was not baptized. My father was a very deep man, and he had a very deep inner life, also of connection with truth, with authenticity. And he would take me for walks, and we went just spontaneously into a Catholic church one day around the corner where I lived. And I was fascinated by the paintings of the Stations of the Cross. So you saw Jesus there, and I can close my eyes, see those paintings, and see Jesus there as a presence of light in the middle of each one of those paintings. And I asked many questions to my dad, and he did his best to answer. And actually, those conversations never came back later in our lives, but I carry them with me in my soul as actually very deep. He gave much deeper answers than he and I maybe at that point realized. So there was like definitely a grace there, something that helped me. So I developed an interest in Jesus and also in reading parts of the Bible. I felt a lot of power there, but never religious. So I was not interested in religion or things like that. Then during the adolescent years, the teenage years, I developed other interests, the usual interests that many teenagers may have, some of them, most of them, I think. But then when I was 17 or so, I came to Italy, and then seeing the devotion, feeling the devotion as expressed through the churches there, that brought the whole quest back to me in a way. I was also naturally interested in human psychology, not to study it academically, but just to understand how the human psyche works, how the mind works, how the emotions work. I had a few psychological issues that actually motivated me to go dive deeper, like some fears and things like that. So, and these things all came together. I felt that if you hit on a deeper level than just the personality level, then you can overcome all these issues, psychological complexes, and so forth. So then I'll go fast forward. When I was about 21, there was an American guy who lived on a houseboat in Amsterdam. And I
Mm-hmm.
met a friend, a schoolmate, said, let's go and visit this guy. And he lived on a houseboat. So we visited him, and he turned out to be a disciple of Yogananda, and he had Kriya Yoga. And so we developed a friendship. It was not a long friendship, but very important because he gave me Autobiography of a Yogi, and he gave me the new path. Then it was just called the path, which is the autobiography of Paramahansa of Swami Kriyananda. And he gave me lots of study material. He gave me the Raja Yoga classes and
Mm.
lots of talk tapes. There were tapes at that time, They were not yet, there was no, we're talking about 1981, 1981, 1982. So I developed an inner rapport with Swami, with Master, and with Swami. And I wrote Swami a letter, which was just pouring with love. I'm so happy that you exist. I'm so grateful for everything that you're giving,
Mm.
because I could feel that he had dedicated his life to his guru and his guru's work. So that dedication inspired me. It was like, this is a teaching that has no end. It's an open window onto infinity that works
Mm.
through this man. Swami answered me, and then we exchanged a few letters. And then in 1985, when I was 24, I got to meet him. And that started my bond with him, but also, of course, with Ananda.
What was
And
that like? That was you were 24, 1985. This was you met him in Assisi? Where was that?
no, Assisi, then in those days, the work in Europe was only just starting. And there was a villa in the north of Italy. It was called Villa Rombolotti. And it was near Como, the city of Como, not far from the Swiss border. And there were like a few Americans, our current spiritual director, Kirtani, was one of them. And some people may know, of course, Parvati, she was there, and a few others. And a few Italians, not many, but a
Mm.
few. And it was only just starting. So Swami was very much encouraging young people, to gather courage and to give as much of themselves to this new work as they could. He would always say two things. He would say no, God wants to do many beautiful things on earth, but he can't for the lack of willing instruments. So he
Mm.
was inviting us to become willing instruments. And then he quoted Master saying, the instrument is blessed by what flows through it. So
Mm.
that's how it went. Yeah.
Wow. And when you met Swami Kriyananda, did you feel that your life was changing even more? I mean, that finding autobiography of a yogi, finding those books, finding this path, like you said, that ends in endlessness, to right, like Yogananda said. Then did it become ever even more real when you met Swami?
It did, because there you see a man, having a life and trying to start a work, and that those days he had a companion that he was soon going to marry after we had met the first time, and it became very real. It became very real, and at the same, so it was fun on a social level. The music played a very important role because I was very trained in those moments, and at that time I played a lot, I practiced a lot, and I could play his music for him. And in those days, there weren't so many musicians as there are now connected with Ananda. So I could play his Romanian music, and there was a very deep thing, hit a very deep string in my own heart,
Mm.
and I could play it for him, and there was just a rapport from heart to heart. And at the same time, I could feel on a deeper level, and this also happens with hindsight, of course, that there was a grace coming into my life through that friendship,
Mm.
through
Mm.
that mentorship and friendship. And so, some time passed, I became a minister, even though I didn't live in one of the communities. I co-founded a meditation Nanda center in Rome. I became he made me a minister and then a light bearer. And then at a certain point, 15 years ago, I moved to Ananda Sisi.
Mm.
And yeah, that was the,
It's beautiful to hear your story in that way. I've never heard it in that detail. Uh, I wonder because you had the experience with music before meeting Swami, of course. What was it like? Was there a difference in his music or playing his music? You were talking about the instrument is blessed by that which flows through it. Did you feel a sense of that grace and that blessing that you talked about through the music?
Yes, definitely. It's interesting. Some in those days it was not that easy for musicians to stay connected with Ananda through their profession because a professional training also creates a certain groove, certain grooves. Like this is what music should be, and it can sort of. And I came also from a musical family, so there were lots of patterns there.
Mm.
And um, I just had to trust what was happening when I was playing the music, which compared to, I have continued always to love the classical composers that I've studied and that I can still study and play when I try to stay informed. But I have lost the idea. There was in the beginning there, maybe this is too simple, mental patterns that come because Swami's music is not the work of a craftsman. It's not, although he put a lot of craft in it, he had to, because composing, you need to write down the notes. That's not an easy thing. So first came the idea, the musical idea into his mind, the ideas. He had always had melodies in his mind. Then he needed to learn how to write them down. And he had some help, of course, but he also put a lot of effort in himself. I remember his one beautiful song from the oratorium, Christ Lives in the Holy Land, which is called Let This Cup Pass By Me.
Mm.
And it is a duo of cello, violin, and voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've played it many times with him singing the where Jesus says, thy will be done. If possible, let this cup pass by me. Nevertheless, thy will be done. And it is a duo, and it is deep and touching, and it just hits the essence somehow. And so he said then, yeah, that was difficult to write. Not that he didn't have the melody right, but he had to sit down and then, develop the craft to
Mm-hmm.
write it down. So he just only developed the craft that he needed to write it down. There was no ambition to be a composer. It was
Mm-hmm.
just the ideas come. This, if I want others to hear this, I need to write it down. And it was
Mm-hmm.
the same with his piano. There is a recording where he plays his piano sonata, and it's beautiful piano playing. He has a beautiful touch. It could be any, as far as I'm concerned, even a famous pianist. But he only started practicing his technique again once he realized that he wanted to play that sonata that he had written himself.
Mm.
So it's very the inspiration comes, then you need to develop the craft, but you develop the craft not as an end in itself, but just so that you can transmit the inspiration. And for myself, through the years, I've played the same music over and over and again, and it has never finished to nurture. I would say nurture my the music of my consciousness.
Hmm. The inspiration there is ever new. I know what you
It's
mean.
yeah,
Amazing.
it's ever new. It's there. It vibrates in the ether or something, and so
Yeah.
it's there. Yeah,
Beautiful. So as your journey progressed here on the path to self-realization and you had a divine friendship and the blessing of meeting Swami, to shift a little bit towards the book, of course, which we'll talk about. But when did you, I know you have a special relationship with Swami Sri Yukteswar, our Param Guru. And of course, the book is inspired by Sri Yukteswar and overcoming the meannesses of the heart, removing the meannesses of the heart, and the stages of the heart, moving towards purity of heart. But before we get into that, just I wonder because I really appreciated how you talked about inviting a sage into your home with the book, and that sage, of course, being Sri Yukteswar. But could you share with us a little bit about how that inner relationship with Sri Yukteswar developed for you?
I wouldn't be surprised if many people, after reading the autobiography of a yogi, feel a special, I would say, not compare, but a special connection with Sri Yukteswar. We must remember that the way he presents Sri Yukteswar in the first page, in the second sentence maybe, just immediately promotes Sri Yukteswar to the protagonist, the main character of the whole book. He says, "My own life led me to a Christ-like sage, whose life is now chiseled for the ages." And that's only the second sentence. So he's not going to say, "I'm going to write about myself, about my life as a yogi." No, I'm going to portray a Christ-like sage. And who was that Christ-like sage? It was Swami Sri Yukteswar. So then you read the book, and of course, autobiography of a yogi is like scripture. You can read it over and over again, and always discover new things in it. But it's always that enormous self-assurance, that power behind Sri Yukteswar's words, and also how Yogananda manages to make him come alive, really, like a living presence in the book. That is one of the strongest communicative powers, I think, that are, that of the whole autobiography of a yogi. And plus, of course, their bonds. So it's both. It's not only a portrait of a great sage, but also the bond between disciple and guru. Those are two extremely powerful tools of the book, I think, characteristics of the book, features of the book.
Yeah, but what I really appreciate about what you've done in awakening the natural love of the heart here is make Sri Yukteswar a little bit more accessible. So
Yeah,
I wonder if you
I
could
think.
share with us, about that, just how
Yeah.
that journey and why the book and where you were trying to step down Sri Yukteswar to maybe a little bit more accessible.
Well, there's two things, of course. In the book, in Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda brings him very close to you. He makes him very accessible. I mean, of course, as far as a great sage can be, there's always something like difficult, not difficult, but like intimidating almost in a great sage. There is something peremptory, something very, you can't really, it's a beam of very almost blinding light, and it's there. But the people who read the book are also thirsty for truth, and that is what vibrates in everything Sri Yukteswar says in the book. Then you start reading, you get curious, and you start reading the sacred, the holy science. And that is not an accessible book for many reasons. Yeah. So one reason is that he uses a lot of Sanskrit terms, and just like a biologist uses Latin, he doesn't call a lion a lion, but he calls it Leo Panthera. So he uses Latin to describe a species, an animal. So Sri Yukteswar used a lot of Latin, used a lot of Sanskrit. But you have to get through that. You have to look beyond that. And I think one of the things that I don't think I have finished writing about the holy science. I think more could come. That's what I feel, at least. But so there are a few more accessible parts. One is the introduction, where Sri Yukteswar describes the yugas. And the other one is where he describes the natural love of the heart as being the indispensable ingredient for spiritual growth and to reach freedom and salvation. And then at the end, he repeats that. So he's written a book with many difficult things that you need to meditate on. Scripture, you never read scripture like a novel from the beginning to the end. You either you open it at random, that's possible, or if you read it from the beginning to the end, you take your time. You read and then you try to absorb and you meditate on it, and you take it in your daily life, and you take it in your relationships and in your job, and you take it with you. So that is possible also with this book. And so if you start with that the need to purify the heart, first of all, so that the natural love can awaken. If you start with that, then you have, of course, a marvelous introduction that is accessible for all of us, because all of us know that we need to do that. And something within us knows that that is what we need to do. We don't want to remain stuck in anything smaller or meaner than that. It is a grand thing. A, it is a process of great joy. The heart just rejoices when you start working on yourself to overcome those meannesses, even though it takes effort. Still, you practice introspection, and then the heart just start growing. And love is not just, I love you, you love me. That's not just what love is all about. Love is a power, I
Mm.
feel. And so
Mhm.
when you do your introspection, as Sri Yukteswar recommends it, and you do your meditation and you do your visualizations and everything, then I feel that somehow the heart, and this is a mental thing, introspection is a mental thing, but it means looking at what's going on inside your emotional, psychological chemistry and what's going on in your heart. And you feel that the heart begins to rejoice because it gets free. And then that love manifests, I think, in your life just as a power. People feel loved when you're around them, when they're around you. You become solution oriented. You forget about your smallness.
Mm.
You're just free.
Mm. Uh, that's beautiful, Darshan. And what I found inspiring, what you were sharing, and the way you share it in the book as well, the reminder that that love is our nature, the natural love of the heart.
Yes.
I was reading in Swami Kriyananda's book, Awaken to Superconsciousness, yesterday, and he was talking about the yamas, nonviolence, ahimsa, which of course was popularized by Gandhi. But that reminder and what you were just sharing of once we stop those tendencies towards violence towards ourselves and others, mentally, emotionally, of course, not outwardly as well, but all that's left is the natural love of the heart. That's who and what we are. So I find that so inspiring. Um, and I wonder if you could share a little bit. I was rereading the book yesterday, and there's the third part of your book where you talk about three helpful practices, and
Mm.
one of them is patience that you talk
Yes.
about.
Yes.
Um, and I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about that, because it's always
Yeah,
it's a,
I'll try.
I think it's a challenge for all of us.
So, first of all, I thought the opening quote from Yogananda is funny. He says, so many people waste their time trying to do things quickly.
I love that
I
quote.
think
Yeah.
that's very sharp. So, Sri Yukteswar calls patience holy patience. It is his definition of tapasya. And tapasya is a basic prescription of yoga. Yogis say you must practice tapasya, and it is often translated as austerity or
Mm.
self-discipline. Now, there's much more to it, I feel. Um, patience to transcend time. There is a saying that says patience is the shortest route to God realization.
Mhm.
So there is underlying patience. There is a acceptance, a calm acceptance of things as they are. There is also, let's say, if we apply patience to meditation, and you say, I want my meditations to become longer. So instead of an hour or an hour and a half, you want to do 2 hours. Or if you do 5 minutes, you say, no, I want to do 10 minutes. So you work on that, and you use maybe your cell phone so that you don't get up before. So you sit there and you follow the instructions for meditation. And then after you've done your techniques, you have to stay seated and enjoy it. But there may be moments where you become restless and impatient. And then at that point, you have to say to yourself, I'm not going to stand up. I'm not going to move. I'm going to stay here. So there is the more, let's say, personal conviction, personal. But then if you say, I'm not going to stand up, then you have to also make it fun to stay seated, right?
Mm.
So you have to focus on something else than time. And you can work on inner relaxation, on emotional relaxation, for example, letting go of everything that is not, letting go of all the attachments or everything that makes you worry. You can work on that, work on deep relaxation. At that point, there is no time. There is also another important experience that I can share. We had a center in Rome, and we were organizing the long Christmas meditation, and we had invited Jayadev, who was already living at Ananda. He still is himself a writer and a teacher, and a very, very dynamic, wonderful devotee. And he came to support and lead this meditation. And so we had made a program, like, after an hour we can do some more chanting and this and that. But he wasn't looking at the program. So he came, had his guitar, did some chanting, and then immediately we went into very long time of meditation. And he only said one thing that I've remembered, even now we're talking about 20 years ago, if not more. He said, if you concentrate, there is no time. So concentration kills time, in other words. Absorption kills time. So all you need to do is if you want to transcend time, you have to develop patience through inner calmness, calm acceptance, calm relaxation, mental, emotional relaxation, and focus. Just don't focus on time, focus on something else. Focus on God, focus on the breath, focus on the spiritual eye, whatever it is. But I think those three factors, and then of course, time is also a very important threat to love. Human love, can be worn out, can wear out through time. But if you stay inwardly focused, then that inner power of love that is set free through your patience will also manifest in your love relationship with other people.
Mm.
And so it works within, it works without. And I'm not saying that I'm the most patient person in the world, not at all. But I'm saying I love to work on it.
Mm.
That's
Well,
at least I understand that is very, very important.
And I really appreciate you sharing
Mm.
that inspiring way to work on patience as concentration, as absorption, as inspiration.
Yes,
I hadn't
absolutely.
thought about it like that. That's why it was inspiring for me when I read it
Yeah.
in the book. And that calm inner relaxation, like you were saying, I remember reading in Swami Kriyananda's Essence of the Gita that he said something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, that spiritual growth is really upward inner relaxation
Yes.
and letting go of those attachments. Could you share with us a little bit about what are those meannesses of the heart? I know you have a chapter for each one of them in the book.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe
They're
touch on one
very,
or two as you feel, and
yeah.
our
Yeah.
world seems we need this kind of medicine right now.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, I'm looking at the battery, but I'm gonna do my best.
Whenever if your battery dies, it's okay.
All right.
We'll be patient for the
So,
next.
so these meannesses, it's like a roadmap. He's saying if you don't need to try to be better than you are, or you don't need to focus on some abstract love or whatever. Look at yourself and yourself within and see if this exists in your life. And so, let me give an example. Racism, racial prejudice. Why is that a meanness? Well, if you look deep into what racism really implies, it is you have to think of the words of Dr. King, Martin Luther King. He says, don't look at the color of a man's skin, but look at the content of his character.
Mm.
So if you expand this definition of racism, you can say racism means that you are conditioned by outward appearance. And that means not only a race, it can also mean a face that you don't like,
Mm.
or a person who's disfigured, or a person who comes from a social class that you find coarse and not pleasant. And so you react to that and you basically separate those persons from your heart. And that natural love of the heart suffers at that point. So you do introspection and you look at yourself and you look your watch. And this is all, I wrote it in my book somewhere. Introspection needs to be supported by meditation. Because then you have, by some meditation, a little bit every day, just watch the breath, or do what you can, but make sure you sit down and you have some time to just go within and focus. So if you look at within for racial, if there's any racism, the quote that I had on that chapter was a lady who is she's an African American, and she says the funny thing with you don't need to be an anti-racist to, hold on, what does she say? You can be anti-racist while you're also a racist. So in other words, as long as you work on it, you go within. There are tests to see if a person is a racist or not. And you would be amazed how many people fail the test who would consider themselves not to be racists. But again, so this is all fairly mental, isn't it? So you work on observing yourself, you focus, you meditate on. But if you consider racism as the inability to look beyond appearance, that already helps. And then again, if you work on it, the heart just rejoices. It's true that you do an intellectual, mental, and also, of course, a yogic meditative job. But at the same time, the heart opens because you're working on it. And because it's a meanness, it is an inner tension. It impedes, it makes the love suffer, or it represses it. So suppresses it. Yeah. So that's one. Another one that I remember is shame, for example. And there I had a sort of, I felt a funny interpretation of the story of Adam and Eve, because they, of course, they are made in God's image, which means that they're free. They're free to choose God or to choose something, an alternative to God, and they choose the alternative, and then they are ashamed because they choose basically physical pleasure instead of spiritual joy, basically, and then they are ashamed. So then the Bible says, the Lord was walking in the garden at the mid of day, and he called them. And then Adam says, we don't want to come, we're hiding in the bushes, and because we're ashamed, we are naked. And then, of course, we know the story. They are expelled from paradise by an angel, I think, with a flaming sword and so forth. But you can also look at it differently and say, God was not expelling them. They were expelling God. They refused to come out of those bushes, take that fig leaf from their intimate parts, and just stand naked before their own beloved Father. What is there to hide when you stand in front of God? Nothing. But if you do hide, you have a problem. That is shame. And then you expel yourself, or you expel God from your heart. So if you overcome, if you have the courage and the complete honesty and sincerity to stand naked in front of your own Father or your Divine Mother or your Guru, then there is nothing to fear. And then again, that natural love of the heart is, again, that always seeks connection with God, begins to awaken. So that's another example. And so there are 8 of them. And in about each one of them, I just, came with some stories. Some of them were from my personal life, my own life, I mean. Others were from other people's lives or from the master's lives. And It was such a joy to write it because I could feel that because it's not that difficult. You just work on yourself, which is always fun to do. You don't need to be afraid. You just work on yourself and you have a roadmap. You follow, say, okay, I need to overcome this, I need to overcome, and you do it calmly. You do it with love. You do it even with fun, if you like. And if you make, and your progress, you can measure to the degree in which you feel that your love, that the heart rejoices in what
Mm.
you're doing. It's a mental thing, but the heart rejoices. Yeah.
That's a beautiful interpretation of the Garden of Eden story. I never thought about that, and it's so true. So we're
Yeah.
expelling God, right? We're hiding in shame. How do you what do you say to our world right now? We seem like we're on a precipice of just an explosion outwardly, and a lot of that has to do with some of, or all of it probably has to do with these meannesses of the heart. um, you talked a little bit about racism, but I know one of the meannesses that Sri Yukteswar talks about as well, which you sort of hinted at, is pride of pedigree, pride of nationality. um,
Plan. Yeah.
yeah, how do we break out of that kind of us four and no more, that
Yeah. Well, I have, first of all, I think many, many, many people in today's world are very sincere, ardent spiritual seekers. And that's the only place where we can start. We cannot do anything politically. If you have to give a vote, a political vote, give your votes, do it as conscientiously as possible. But there's not more than you can do than that you can do. But what we can do is just we like already there, or if you buy and read a book like this, or you buy even better autobiography of a yogi, then you start, or books by Swami Kriyananda, other books by this wonderful, powerful publishing house, Crystal Clarity. Then you get tools to work on yourself. Now, if you work on yourself, and if this heart rejoices, and this love indeed begins to awaken, then there is a magnetism that's happening. It's like a magnetic aura will grow around you and will project um, uplifting energy to other people. If you also are part of a community of seekers, it can be a Facebook community, it can be a real community like in a city, it can be a meditation group or whatever, and you share these teachings like this with other people, um, and then you get enthused about it and you share your practices and your experiences, then again, the magnetism becomes even stronger. And the only thing that we can do is, I think, be very determined to turn within and do our job, working on ourselves, to remove these impediments, to remove these tensions, these meannesses, and share the process, and realizing that it's a joyful thing to do. In the meantime, we try to lead our lives as well as we can. We try to take care of our dear ones, our finances, our health. You just do what you have to do. You do your duty. And most importantly, you try to um, become or part of some sort of spiritual family or community. And then you're doing it together.
Hmm.
And when you do it together, I think that will be the answer to the world. People who are smaller groups, but their magnetism will be stronger than any political or military power that I can think of. And I've been to Russia lately. Last year I went to Russia, and of course the situation in Russia and Ukraine is extremely difficult. But there was no need to go there. We just focused on we had a wonderful retreat. We focused on meditation. We did 6-hour meditations. We focused on the teachings, and hearts were open, and there was love.
Yeah. Change yourself, and you've done your part in changing the world, like Yogananda said, you're reminding me of,
Yeah,
and the power of community. I, of course, know how enthusiastic Swami Kriyananda was because Yogananda was so enthusiastic about world brotherhood communities and what you're saying, them being the solution for all of the world's ills right now. And I thank you so much for reminding us that it's fun. I think, and it's fun to do it together, to work
great
on.
fun.
It's great. It's great fun.
Yeah.
Uh, working with you on this book has been a great
Yeah.
joy.
For me too. And I can say one more thing. Company, spiritual company is not only people, it's also books and music. So I can say make sure you have these books on your night bedside cabinet. Read a little bit every night, and you will be nurtured, and grace will enter your life, and uh, and you will be given wings, and you will be guided to whatever your spiritual destiny is, whether it's an Ananda family or another spiritual family, doesn't matter. But you will no longer be alone. You will no longer feel alone because a good book is a friend, just like
Mm.
a friend. He speaks to you.
Mhm.
And when I read Swami's books, I only read Swami Kriyananda's books. I can read 3 paragraphs, and I'm just feeling better about life, about myself, about everything. Now, what is better than that? I would say, what better company than that? So, books are important.
How do you, Darshan, make it fun? Rather than, I know one thing you talked about in the book too is there's a tendency towards procrastination and fillers. I find
That's
that.
true.
But how do you,
That's very true. I
how does it work
agree.
for yourself to switch it to making
Mm.
making it fun so that it's become customary for you. It's become your being, to go to these friends. But in the beginning, if you're struggling with that, do you have any suggestions for how?
Yeah, no, that's very true. Reading is not it's not stimulated by social media networks very much because there it's too fast. Even when you have a wonderful spiritual Facebook community or Instagram family, usually, and the quotes are wonderful, and that's important, very important. Stay with it. But it's fast, and we say paper is patient. So you have to, I would say, you can use audiobooks and listen to it when you're driving in your car. This book has also been recorded. So there's an audiobook. There are audiobooks of the path, audiobooks of the autobiography of a yogi. That's one way. But even that for me is not the same as just reading, because reading there's silence, and it's
Mm,
much more even the author speaking directly with me through my heart, even though Swami recorded his own books and it's lovely. But even then, when I read him, I feel him even closer.
mm.
But that's individual. That depends on where you are and what is. It's not the same for everybody. And I think it is just worth your while to read every day 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And when it is scripture, because these books are scripture, you should feel some sort of nourishment. Make it very intimate. Just saying, you want to have quality time with your child, for example, and you make sure that you spend, a few days a week, some time where you're just being together. And it's the same with a book. You have to make it a love story. You have to be patient. You have um, to have faith that if you persevere and you go beyond the difficulty of reading, the type of concentration that it demands and everything, you will give yourself a wonderful education,
Mm.
and like an education of both the intellect, the heart, and the mind and the heart, and of course the spirit.
Well, that's beautiful. It's like having date night with spirit, with the saints, having
Yeah,
that special time with them. And thank you for
it
that.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's so important to. I think our world is so noisy, right now. And it's just that's just the tendency of the world to draw us out. But you're reminding us that there's another world of inspiration within. And the more that we focus on that, the more magnetic and the more inspired we are in that direction. So I know that your computer is maybe at the end, and
No,
mine probably.
it's still working a little bit, but
Well,
you
in
decide.
closing, Darshan, do you have any other things, anything I didn't ask that you wish I had asked, or anything that you?
Um, mm, well, maybe just to emphasize that when you read this particular book that I wrote myself, it was like written on in a flow of just deep enthusiasm, of course. But the idea is that for those who know Sri Yukteswar, because they read the autobiography of a yogi, is that they say about him, he lived in an ashram, his body never left India. Um, but nevertheless, he's happy to enter your home and just to sit with you, and he will never judge you, never ever. He will just, maybe look at you and say a few words and give you a few guidelines, and he's there to help you. So even if you live in a metropole and your life, there is like exactly what you said, there is noise and there is chaos around you, and competition and tension and stress at work, and issues in the home, difficult challenges or whatever it be. To have the company of a wise man, a sage, just by thinking of him, by visualizing him, and yes, also by studying his teachings, of course, uh, it's just a wonderful, wonderful blessing. And it is, if not really immediately the way out, it is the beginning of the way out and of wonderful growth, and also a return of happiness in your
Mm,
life. And your happiness will be the happiness of your loved ones as well,
mm.
because they can feel that you have more peace, you're there for them, you don't need to think about yourself so much anymore. And it's just, yeah, maybe that I could say.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a beautiful way to close out our conversation. Thank you so much, Darshan, for
Thank
taking.
you, Narayan.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And just again, for everyone, Awakening the Natural Love of the Heart is on crystalclarity.com. It's also available on Amazon, and we'll put all the links in the recording details here. And the great news, too, is Darshan's coming from Assisi in May for a visit to Ananda Village, Sacramento, Palo Alto, and even you're going to Texas as well.
Yes, Dallas. Yeah.
So be on the lookout for his trip. And if you have any questions, of course, let us know and we'll be happy to respond. Thank you, Darshan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Narayan. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Jai Guru. Many blessings.